of digitization of local language media. I would first like to welcome our moderator for the session, Mr. Vivekanand Pani, co-founder and CTO, Reverie Language Technologies. And now welcoming our panelists for the session, we have with us Mr. Chintan Bakshi, partner Incubation, CIIE.co, Mr. Hemant Jain, senior EVP and head digital business, Lokmat Media, Mr. Saurabh Shukla, founder and chief editor of NewsMobile. Welcome all of you. Dear delegates, please keep asking your questions in the chat box. The panel will pick a few and answer for you in the end. Over to you, Mr. Vivekanand.
Thank you, Shivani, and welcome everyone on this very interesting panel today with an esteemed group of panelists. Like Shivani introduced, Chintan, Hemant, and Saurabh. So I would like first to let them introduce themselves in about a line, and then we can get into the discussions on the impediments of growth to the growth of digitization of local language media. This is going to be a very interesting discussion. So Hemant, sorry, Chintan, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Thanks, Vivek. So I am Chintan Bakshi, partner incubation at CIIE.co. We are a startup incubation center based out of IIM Ahmedabad, and now we operate out of multiple geographies, Ahmedabad, Jaipur, Guwahati, Hyderabad, Pune, etc. And we basically support early stage startups in basically moving to the next level through startup seed funding, etc.
Oh, that's great. So maybe Hemant. Hemant, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hemant, and I work as EVP and head of digital businesses for Lokmat, which is the largest read Marathi news daily in India. And I have been in the digital media space since last 25 years, worked across digital solutions, consumer broadband, and mobile entertainment. And it's indeed a pleasure to be part of the esteemed panel.
Great. Great. Thanks, Hemant. And Saurabh, so why did you? Yeah.
Thanks, Vivek. I'm Saurabh Shukla. I'm founder and editor-in-chief of NewsMobile. That's Asia's first mobile-based fact-check platform. We debunk fake news and misinformation in several Indian languages. And during COVID pandemic, we have been at the forefront of debunking misinformation and fake news. Great to be here. Thank
you. Great. So, as we can see, we have got a very interesting panel here. People who have been experts in certain, very critical, I would say, the areas of concern and interest today. The startups, the news media, as well as what we see as fake news, very often taking over the real news today. Quickly, maybe the first curiosity that I had, this is a question probably for Hemant. The reach of internet in the past few years has grown phenomenally. There has been a steep rise in the online readership. I was going through the the readership survey, which shows that the offline readership has been declining, but the online readership in the years between 2017 and 19 has actually grown 120%. So yet there is this perception that Indian language content availability on the internet is minimal, right? So that would naturally make online engagements a lot less useful. If there is not enough content, obviously one cannot engage enough. What is your take on this, and how would you how have you used the digital media to increase consumption at your ends? What do you see as impediments that you notice?
So thank you, Vivek, for your question. Before I come to answer the very specifics, I'd just like to quickly set the context. So I personally believe we are living in very exciting times today. And India today is the second largest digital population in the world and growing growing very steadily, very fast. The Comscore latest data pegs India's total digital population at 468 million. And when you look at the Indian language internet users, the base has been growing at a 41% compounded annual growth rate from 2011 to 2016. And in fact, the last decade has been really a decade of tremendous action and a lot of developments, etc. And this growth is continuing at an 18% compounded annual growth as compared to English internet user base, which is only growing at 3%. And with this, it is estimated by the end of this financial year, the Indian languages would contribute close to 75% of India's entire internet user base. Now, when you look at within the Indian languages, Hindi is expected to lead the pack, and along with Marathi, Bengali, and the southern languages, they're going to very clearly steer the dominance of the Indian language content on internet. Now, when we look at, say, for example, Hindi, and if I look at the top 15 the top 15 Hindi websites, news websites on Comscore, the number of unique users per month, they range anywhere between 21 million to 18 million. That's a size in terms of a single language across the top 15 websites. And when when I consider Marathi as a language, the top 5 publishers, for the top 5 publishers, the unique users range from 12 million to 20 million. Very interestingly, when I joined Lokmat in 2016, we had a little less than 1 million unique users per month, contributing to a little less than 10 million page views. And now, last month, we did 20 million unique users, contributing to 289 million page views. Now, talking about local language media in India is not a new phenomenon, and it dates back hundreds of years, largely dominated by print. And even today, 9 out of the 10 top newspapers in India are local language newspapers. For example, in spite of Lokmat being in Marathi and operating in a single geographical state, it still enjoys much larger readership in the largest read English daily in India. So I really don't agree with the point around perception that Indian language content available on the internet is minimal. And what has really happened is that we all need to appreciate that over the last 10 years, there has been considerable shifts which has led to growth of all users and jump in consumption of local languages. And I quickly want to rattle out some of these points which have been my observations. So what we saw in the last 10 decades, in the last decade, especially after the launch of Jio, there has been easy access. The access to internet has become much easier and affordable, which has led to growth in online traffic coming from tier 2, tier 3 towns and villages, and has also directly increased the growth of Indian language content users on the internet. The second very important thing which has happened for, I would say, media businesses which have been very, very traditional, age-old, run by family-owned businesses, there has been a considerable shift in mindset to embrace the new change, moving from print to digital. And this is all led by the next gen within the family who have studied abroad, are early adopters of technology, and they're very keen to build businesses of future. They also realize the importance of a digital-first approach, which is very different from their existing business models. So they're wanting to invest in re-engineering, build converged newsrooms, and continue to deliver a credible news platform, moving from a single source of delivery to a multiple platform, from print to, say, digital to video, etc. That's one. The other interesting point has been a very important contribution made by major tech players. While to any news, look at them as competition for sure. But the amount of growth and compatibility which has happened in Indian languages for the discoverability of content. For example, Google News currently supports 16 Indian languages. Search is available in 9 languages. YouTube homepage is available in 10 languages. And also, if you look at video consumption on YouTube, 95% of content is consumed in local languages. The other thing which we've seen in the recent last 2-3 years is the rise of OTT. And what has happened, it has created a much wider ecosystem for the development or generation or creation of video content in local languages. Today, in the last 4 years, we have not only jumped or evolved from print to digital in the form of text and visual stories, but have very fast evolved to video. We very closely work with YouTube and Facebook. And from a zero presence in video in 3 years, we now do an average of 140 million video views across these two platforms only in Marathi language. The other aspect has been segmentation. While when we look at English language, we had verticals in form of auto, education, gadgets, women-centric portals, etc., and also new gen content sites in the form of BuzzFeed and Scoop. The same is now available in local language, thereby driving consumption among the Gen Z. I've been a big fan of audio, and during my vast days in Hangama, we've done some fabulous work on IVR and voice portals. And we had seen how rural India really spends the 30 rupees subscription a month to consume content over audio. And I am a firm believer that audio is going to reignite discovery and consumption, especially in rural India. The other interesting thing which has happened for digital news media, especially, has been the surge of pandemic. That's the one big change which has happened in the last 9 months, which is what I would say demonetization could not do what COVID has done for news media side, OTT platforms, mobile payments, and the more and more we see traffic surging from tier 2, tier 3, I find the relevance of local language content among the hyperlocal audience is going to be a very, very big differentiators as we as we move forward. Because the guys in the local catchment are not really interested so much in the national issues, then they're interested in their local civic issues, the local opportunities which empowers them. And today, for us at Lokmat, since the last 45 years, our biggest strength has been hyperlocal. 4,000 on-ground reporters covering hyperlocal news from 35 district places of Maharashtra. So we're really doing two very significant things. One is in terms of training these 4,000 ground reporters to think digital first, to kind of get trained on mobile journalism. And secondly, we are using technology to see how. So very recently we launched a program where using technology, we automatically print all the editions of print into digital without any kind of a manual intervention. And when it comes to impediments, I believe one of the very important points here is with regard to a deep understanding of consumer behavior in the tier 2, tier 3 markets, which I believe most of us still lack, because the kind of sophistication, UI, UX, and consumer experience we try to build for urban audience might not really work. So how do I build better content relevancy, discoverability, and ease of use is point number one. Point number two, for all the regional players across country, monetization continues to be a big challenge. And I just hope that we are able to, somehow pass through this phase. Point number three is with regard to local talent. Huge challenge, lack of digital orientation. And my closing point is, as a news publisher, I would urge everyone to start thinking multi-platform content distribution, because it is imperative for your brand to be discovered and stay relevant. But what it also does, it puts additional pressure in developing custom-created specific platforms, because you can't have a very cookie-cutter approach. So when you look at Facebook, the kind of stories which work on Facebook are more skewed towards human interest stories, emotional stories, stories which are more informative. The reason why people come to Lokmat.com is very different. The people why they consume Lokmat content on ShareChat is very different. So I think it is very important for you to have a very holistic view and not say that, hey, I'm only going to serve people who come on Lokmat.com. So that's been some of our approaches and thought process. That's how we have built capabilities. And I would say that's how we have grown from 1 million uniques to 20 million uniques over the last 4 years.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, phenomenal set of statistics, and you almost covered every aspect of the digital usage, the perception and the discoverability issues, the monetization, as well as what haunts the industry, the talent availability. including, the necessity to look at the spread than to think that, there are only narrow use cases that are sought after. Very, very interesting points. In fact, I would say that there are two points that that are very striking. For example, when you mentioned 20 million, did you mention that 20 million from Maharashtra alone? 20 million users unique?
So almost 90 to 92% of our traffic is from Maharashtra alone.
Okay, great. So that means, it probably would be covering like half the literates of Maharashtra. So that is practically a very large, reach when it comes to online readership alone, considering that there are so many people who are still, reading a lot offline. In fact, I wanted to, but since we are here, I think my natural next question has to be to Saurabh. You founded News Media, NewsMobile, right? In 2012. It's almost a decade ago, right? So, and so I would, so I would have to admit that you must have been one of the earliest in the domain. A very timely vision. Yeah, in fact, those were the days when the mobile phones didn't even show or display Indian language properly, because, in 2009, when we started Reverie, one of the biggest challenge that we saw was, no business could go multilingual because device access did not allow you to display multilingual. So, but from then when you started and until now, in the past, decade, the reach and readability on the internet, has changed phenomenally, right? And it has seen the kind of change that was not really imagined or not even predicted by anybody well before. So I can say that what you did was definitely a vision, a timely vision. So, but how would you see, what you thought and what you have seen, how the growth has been happening, whether there were real impediments then, or, there are more impediments now?
Vivek, thank you so much. And Hemant has set the ball rolling with a very comprehensive, I think, enunciation of what the issues are there.
Right.
So I'll just add to the argument that he's brought forward. I completely believe that regional languages and the content is the heart of India. Having covered the country extensively as a ground reporter, having and as a founder of NewsMobile since 2014, one of the things, one of the aims was that we wanted to reach out to the mobile audiences in different languages, also make sure that they consume credible content. That's how we started doing fact checking, because one of the challenges, and I would say, and I would admit it, that while we fact check, we realize that sometimes that lack of confirmation, the lack of credibility still plagues a lot of smaller publishers. I'm not talking about, obviously, Lokmat is very credible, regarded. They do a lot of due diligence, but what has been happening is the proliferation of digital media in the vernacular space has also meant that a lot of there is a proliferation of stories which are unsubstantiated, the content which is unsubstantiated, which is creating a challenge for the growth of this media, because that has a direct bearing, because a lot of advertisers, a lot of people, even globally, they start to doubt the credibility here. So that is where we need to plug the gap by making sure that we are training the journalist at the ground level, ensuring the use of technology, verification technology, that when a journalist files a report, uh, is it coming from a GPS location where the person is saying that, oh, this incident has happened? Because otherwise, in digital media, sometimes, and this has happened, I've been in some of the biggest newsrooms in India as a journalist. I can tell you, it was a challenge, and I've always believed in one thing, the old school mantra, that don't rush just to publish something that you think is exciting or you think that can generate eyeballs. Always verify. Doesn't matter. You may not be the first one, but you should be the credible one to publish that story or news report out. That is one of the challenges that even now we face when it comes to regional languages. We need to work on that. And I know, and that's the reason we have a program where we work We have a young journalist program where we work with a lot of young people, and that comes, in different languages also, where we try to educate them on the do's and don'ts, ethics of good journalism, use of technology. And that is where, a lot of social media platforms, we work with them very, very closely. They're doing a good job as well. The other challenge was earlier was discoverability. How do you discover good content? Also, I would feel that in regional languages, there is a need to set a good parameters where, publishers like Lokmat, some of the others, one, even, publishers like us can join hands, where we create a good, credible content, uh, a baseline, degree, so that consumers, people who are following this content, advertisers, they tend to trust this content more. The other thing is that today, this content, as I said earlier, reaches out to the last mile. The real heart of India is through regional content, and as Hemant has rightly said, the growth has been phenomenal. But we also have to make sure that alongside, we need to create newer streams, both in terms of monetization, because monetization continues to be a big challenge, because as I say, it's linked to perception. The same kind of story, if it's there running in a prominent English media platform, may get more prominence and get more quoted than if it's running on a regional platform. And I can tell you one secret out, and I have no qualms in saying it. Any good journalist in India, and I've learned it, as part of my journalism training, would always follow regional newspapers, regional media to get the first cues, because they have the feet on the ground.
Right.
It's the perception battle that they have to win, which will only happen as there is greater investment, greater transparency, making sure that you have your people on the ground well trained, and obviously smart use of technology. So that's something I think ails the regional medium, because this is the medium which is the growth medium. This is the medium of communication, and that in India, and I can tell you, in 1996 was the first time, when I started my journalism career. Often the regional media was looked down upon by certain people. I'm not naming any category, but those people in high offices, people, whether in bureaucracy, even in the corporates, have now embraced it. They want to embrace it more, but they still grapple with this perception problem. That has to be really overcome. That is where credibility, transparency, making sure that you do more fact-check journalism, that will, I would say, help spur this, regional industry even more, and the regional content even more. And there are enough and more unique content creators in regional languages, I would say, who are waiting to be discovered. They don't get the right kind of platform. They don't get the right voice because of these perception problems which exist, and that is what we have to overcome. And I'm sure, together, with efforts of traditional publishers, like which Hemant represents, like Lokmat, publishers like us, fact-checking publishers like NewsMobile, we can bridge that gap.
This is absolutely fabulous. This is experience speaking, and some most precious pearls that I can say, that I could note. The not the first, be the credible, right? So that is incredible, in fact. And I agree with you fully that perception is the thing that is coming out more predominantly. Like Hemant mentioned, that you reiterated, and I also endorse the same, because when in 2009, when we started Reverie, one of the things that we found was the biggest difficulty was the way that not just the services, the decision makers, people would generally have a perception that Indian language or the local language media or usage is not important. People do not want that. or if at all somebody wants, they are not willing to pay for it. Whereas the fact remains that, it is the trust that is lying out there, and there has been such demand which has already been found. But yes, monetization is something that I would like to come back to, because advertisement is where monetization happens, but we still see that English advertisements take center stage. But before that, here is a question that I had for Chintan, because so Chintan, you have been helping startups, right? So there is a lot of innovations that actually happen, among startups. Considering that digitization is actually, growing at this rate, what are the trends that you have been observing, and that strengthens your focus to incubate startups in digitization right now, and what are the kind of things that they are working on?
Thanks, Vivek. So I think there's been a very clear growing trend towards a number of startups which come to us at an early stage. As I mentioned, we are really an early stage regional incubator. We work with startups in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, rather than focusing more on the Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi kind of startup. So therefore, we have, I think, a very close understanding of the pulse of what innovators and entrepreneurs are looking at in terms of opportunities. And I think there's a clear significant increase in startups which are trying to solve this problem of trying to digitize local, regional, vernacular content. Having said that, it's not been a smooth ride. While there's a significantly increasing trend, and I think really for the reasons which Hemant and Saurabh talked about, trying to digitize content in a hyper local scenario in a specific language is not going to work on the same business model on which the current the larger media companies are doing. It requires a different sort of an innovation in the business model. Advertising is not going to be easy. I mean, we have had a couple of startups who were able to kind of establish their operations, but they were not able to achieve enough of a traction, right? Because how do you get advertising revenue for if you're serving, let's say, 10, 15, 20 districts of a particular region, assuming that you have a B2C kind of a model, right? You're basically digitized content or news content in a region, let's say in Rajasthan or Madhya Pradesh, etc. The conventional revenue model is advertising, but that may not work. Voice is, I think, is again something which needs to be done. So startups, so what I'm really trying to say is why there's a lot of startup activity, but the business models are still being discovered. We have had a couple of successes. There have been a couple of startups which have taken the B2B route. So they have said that, okay, rather than trying to create our own media company, we will help the existing offline media company become digital. And we will do that not through the B2C route. That means we are not going to help them acquire B2C customers. We will become like a platform which enables them to offer their news to the larger Lokmats and the Rajasthan Patrikas, etc. of the world. So almost like a B2B trading platform where you get news from the grassroots. And it becomes almost like a news agency sort of a model, and you can build some revenue models around it. We have had a startup which focused more on agri, right? They realized that rather than doing general news, the thing which is probably more monetizable is specific agri-based business kind of news, right? Something which gives a clear value to the farmer in this case. And perhaps you can charge a small subscription, but you can probably complement it with voice feeds. Yeah, right. I mean, almost like a missed call service where you get some feeds on your phone. So while they may have a mobile app or a platform, but more than that, it's also something which is inbound. So you get regular feeds. You need to grow this. This is the rate of this particular pesticide. This is the rate in this particular mandi, etc. And you are able to charge a 50, 100 rupee, whatever the per month sort of subscription is. So fundamentally, the point which I'm really trying to say is that while there is significant startup activity, but the business models are still being discovered. And it's the case with most startups which are trying to access or cater to rural customers, right? I mean, it's the same thing. So you cannot simply copy paste a model which works in an urban scenario and then try to apply it there. You'll have to do innovation. Last point which I would like to mention, and I think it was touched upon again by Hemant and Saurabh both, that role of technology will be very, very important. Right? I mean, I can very well see whether it is authenticity, transparency, source verification, whether it is a GPS, perhaps you can even have ledgers or blockchain, etc., doing some level of authentication. I don't know. But I think that's going to be important because the other challenge with trying to digitize local media content is that your economics would need to be very, very efficient, right? You can't work on the same economics that you're working in a city or in the English media, right? So therefore, the role of technology becomes more important. So on one end, there needs to be innovative revenue models, but on the other end, your unit costs of operations need to be very, very efficient, and therefore technology has to be used. So every startup has to see what's the technology that they use, whether it is for source news authentication, source verification, digitization, voice, integration of voice and data, whatever it is. So yeah, I think these are the two quick points. I think there's a third point, maybe that's not important. So that's the investor point. I think there are, see, the other thing is that investors, it's a related point, that investors typically tend to look at unit economics validation as one of the things on the basis of which they invest. And if you have a pure advertising based revenue model, then achieving that unit economy is very difficult, because advertising revenue will come once you have tens of thousands or maybe tens of millions of users. So you will not have early revenue to validate. And that's what investors look for. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. So it's the same point which I'm trying to say, is that getting investments will also be a challenge as long as you are not able to do these little bit of innovations, disruptions in the business model and use of technology. Yeah, I think these are the
right. I completely agree with you, because not just the numbers, but also we have to fight the perception, like Hemant and Saurabh has also mentioned. But yeah, very good points. This is also emerging from all corners, that voice is becoming a very important medium, not just to be able to consume, but probably also to help with discovery, right? So even the search engines are also seeing that about a third of the search queries in Indian languages or from India is actually happening over voice, right? So that, and then B2B, like you mentioned, supporting with tech, something what Hemant's company would also benefit with, when he was mentioning that they would want an automated way to be able to publish without any human intervention when you have a content in one language. Yeah, right. So that actually brings me to another question for you, Chintan. So like I mentioned earlier, that between 2017 and 19, there has been 120% growth. But in 2019, we had pandemic, and 2020 and now, until now, there has actually been a phenomenal growth in online engagement. Of course, we don't have numbers or statistics that I can bring out here, but what do you think is happening, and what do you think is working for the startups that you are supporting, and what could be the challenges in engaging online right now with this growth?
So I think the sort of digital transformation which has happened because of the pandemic, especially in the context of the regional media that we are talking about, I think it has had a significant positive push. People are essentially consuming more content on the internet, right? I mean, whether it's in the tier 2, tier 3 rural areas, but the key I think challenge essentially remains similar to the points which I was talking about, right? I mean, so I think getting users is not a challenge, right? For the startups, and I'm really talking from the perspective of a startup. Getting users is not a challenge, but a startup was telling me that a rural consumer or a tier 3, tier 4 consumer will pay 300 rupees per month for a newspaper, but will not pay 50 rupees for content which is digitally delivered, even if the content is better quality. I mean, it may be a perception, sort of an issue, whatever it is. See, the other thing is that we have had startups
Don't
that we
feel in
have
your hand.
yes. So we
Right.
have had startups in the telemedicine domain, who are delivering high quality health services in tier 3, tier 4 cities in rural areas, who have had to actually start dispensing medicines because customers are not willing to pay for advisory or for simple consultation. I mean, it needs to be for a physical product. So they have had to actually build their consultation fees on the medicines which they deliver. So the bigger challenge in the kind of geographies that we are talking about, consumers of vernacular content, is really monetization. I mean, the numbers are increasing significantly, which is what is getting startups to innovate. But that's I think the good part, that's attracting startups, because once startups come, then the innovation automatically happens, and existing large companies will benefit. But the bigger challenge that I see is innovation in the business model, innovation in the revenue model. How do you, if you have a million, I mean, we have had actually startups who have had a couple of million of users, but they have had challenges in terms of trying to monetize, how to do it. So monetization needs to be thought through right at the outset, right? I mean, you can't say that, okay, I'm growing my users 100%, 200% month-on-month basis. That's not enough. You need to be able to showcase what we call as unit economics positivity very early in the game.
Right.
It's not going to be like building a news portal maybe 10, 15, 20 years back, where you have lots and lots of eyeballs, etc. But monetization, I think, is the bigger challenge here.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
agree.
just to answer your question.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, please finish.
No, I was just saying that, while what you're saying is absolutely right, I mean, getting audience is not an issue. There's a significant surge. But the bigger challenge is your business models and monetization.
Correct. So I completely agree that while we are seeing so much of increase, but monetization still remains the bigger challenge. What has also happened is that with English media, a lot of users on the internet have got matured. What we see is that a lot of Indian language users are sort of new. The whole digital world is new for them. While they are coming in large numbers, they are interested to consume and read and so on. But there is probably this little curve of maturity that they also need to go through. Most of the users are also the first time users through the mobile phone and getting used to a device, and then the internet and so on is. But along with that, the thing of trust continues to remain. If that doesn't get addressed very well, it will continue to probably hurt us. In fact, so therefore, I want to ask this to Saurabh again. With the sort of fake news that spreads today, trust on media, be it the formal or the social media, whatever, it has become a challenge. Fact checking is a big challenge that in fact you are trying to solve now. So, and it has been the single most significant impediment, that we have also seen through the pandemic. And so why wouldn't you tell us about that? We are running a little late on time, so can you do that quick?
I'll be short. Thank you, Vivek. I think I would say there's an infodemic of sorts which is happening all across. If you ask me, one of the biggest challenges during COVID was not only not getting enough bed or lack of oxygen, but was also lack of information that was factual. That was one of the biggest challenge. And I won't single out the regional or vernacular media, but I can tell you that this is the biggest challenge that exists today in the entire content industry, in entire publishing industry. And this is the problem that we are trying to solve. And this problem can only be solved through ensuring that there is skill development when it comes to people who are there on the ground. We do a lot of training, and we do a lot of trainings. We do a lot of work with tech companies, with some of the platforms. Also create unique content, which has been which has in fact helped us to not only make us sustainable. And Chintan spoke about the fact that monetization is a big problem. I was very clear that if you have to start an entity, it has to be monetized. You cannot work on a business model which masses up millions of consumers, but you are not making any money. People, even if you have to find, if B2C customer is not willing to pay for it, find B2B customers who are willing to underwrite the B2C customers that you're reaching out to. But you have to be sustainable, and this is what is the reason why you need to constantly improvise, work with technology, leverage that, make sure you be frugal. One of the biggest and this is what we can learn from regional media, because the big I would say big business driven media, the English media, was always running with huge overheads.
Right.
Regional media always had that advantage, but somehow we are not making good use of that advantage. Globally newsrooms which are not only credible and profitable are also some of the ones who have managed to crack this algorithm. And
Right.
I would say that this is the biggest challenge, and I'm
Sure.
glad that we are making a difference here. And I'm sure there is always a scope of collaboration. So Vivek, Chintan, Hemant, wherever we can collaborate together, we'll be very happy to take this challenge of misinformation and fake news. And we have a specialization here, and we are always happy to collaborate with other like-minded players.
Yeah.
Make sure there's a movement of sorts to clean this.
Right, absolutely. In fact, apart from that being, an impediment even for, the growth and economics, but it is also, socially harmful to be having
Absolutely.
misinformation. Yeah, right. So on the monetization part, in fact, that is one question that I must make it to Hemant. Hemant, we are already at a time that we should be answering public questions, but let's audience questions. Just be quick. So monetizing or value generation is key to the growth of any activity. The two major factors that have actually contributed for English engagements today, are discoverability, that is search, and advertising. So we have also spoken about this relating to Indian language media as well. So while that be so, do you think we need improvements in any of these areas? Where do we stand on a scale of 10 in your opinion?
So first, I believe the biggest challenge is perception among the media buyers and advertisers. So I want to make a very strong point here that regional is not socio-economic poor. Regional is not socio-economic poor because if you look at the economic data today, you look at the disposable income available among the audiences or households, homes in the urban markets. And if you compare it with the combined disposable income of tier 2, tier 3 markets, they're almost the same. That's point number one. Point number two, I would say, is when it comes to, this whole thing around regional, people believe that people staying in smaller towns and villages do not have that level of income in terms of affordability, which I believe is a huge myth. Because if you look at the maximum number of mercs sold in a single day happened in Aurangabad and not in any large city like a Bombay, Delhi or Bangalore, right? That's point number two. Point number three, as Chintan very rightly said, it's very important for you to have a good understanding of your unit economics of business. So when I run Lokmat.com, which is a news portal largely providing news content in text and visual, which is in form of photo galleries, etc., my unit economics of the business is largely page views. Hence, it is imperative for me to understand how to optimize my page view right to rank well on the Google search parameters as well as make money, right? That's point number one.
Right.
When I look at video, my unit economics of the business is views and time spent on the videos. So I think so. What is important today is for you to create a multi advertising opportunity for your advertiser within your ecosystem. That could be on your destination site, extended leg onto Facebook, YouTube, etc. And in a very combined format, how do you reach out to him, providing him a brand solution? So very recently, we launched a program called Vocal for Local, which is for the first time advertisers based in the smaller district places of Maharashtra, who has never advertised on digital, but has been a large, pretty large spender on print. You would be surprised, and I've just been doing these roadshows over the last 15 days. And in total, we have done close to around 180 advertisers and agencies. And I'm overwhelmed with the opportunity. I want to share this with all of you. Don't underestimate either the power of the local consumer or the local advertiser. But because they have very, very, I would say, performance-led budgets, we also need to be absolutely clear of what kind of solution could be provided to them for them to trust you, trust this medium, and continue to advertise with you from a long-term perspective. So the opportunity is there. And at the same time, if you look at the yields, the unit yields, advertising yields for regional publishers is far less compared to English. But I firmly believe that over a period of time, as local languages would become large, because today, when you look at the shift in budgets from television to OTT, where are they advertising? They're advertising behind local content. So the same shift I'm expecting soon to happen. And we have got some of the very, very traditional English language vendors, which includes the likes of the Cokes and the Unilever, who started to work with us closely. And I'm just hoping it's a bright, sunny day for all of us in years to come.
Sure. Yeah. In fact, that's correct. And Indians have been consuming advertisements on radio as well as on television and newspapers in local languages for a long time. And the digital media wouldn't be very different from that. So obviously, we could now come to some questions from the audience that we have. We are running late, so I must take them. A very interesting question is, what do you think is holding back so many media companies from transitioning to digital business models? In fact, this is a very pertinent question, considering that we are seeing such a phenomenal growth in digital engagement in local languages. Why wouldn't businesses actually move or transform to digital businesses? Any one of you who would want to take this? Okay, Saurabh.
Yeah, I think I'm sure my fellow speakers will agree and add to it. One of the challenges is again, lack of, I would say, one, trying to experiment with newer formats. Secondly, we are still living in a time warp with old business models, which this never works in circa 2021 and beyond. You have to be rapidly evolving. Every day when we when I speak to my team, I tell them that we have to, especially on a digital mobile medium, you have to think every second, every minute. You have to pivot. Don't think what was good yesterday will be good tomorrow. You have to embrace that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to put in a lot of money. I can say it. We are I'm very proud of the fact that we are a bootstrapped, self-funded startup, which did not need at this stage to have the need to raise capital to sustain ourselves. Obviously, we will raise capital to create a growth opportunity, but the problem is a lot of traditional players, are not thinking that they are sitting on a unique product which will, one, reach out to very many number of people, but little bit of right kind of strategic investment, making sure some training is done to their personnel, and also the way they operate in, they can really, really create a very viable ecosystem. And hyper local is the key, is the mantra, I can tell you, of growth and also reaching out to the masses and the consumers.
I'm also a very strong believer in that one. In fact, there are examples that have shown that the Chinese applications made for India have actually surpassed in in the rankings against Indian applications made for India, and that is precisely because of the sort of perception that we continue to maintain about Indian English users against in fact, if we look at the Baniyas in our country, and whenever they have to set up a business in a new geography, the first things that they do is learn the language, the culture, and then set up the business according to the local communities. So that's right. In fact, hyperlocal is the key. So one last question, probably we should try taking, what might be the impact of scarcity of local language digital syndicated sources on the growth of vernacular based digital media? Would you like me to repeat that?
Yeah. So, yeah, could you just repeat the question?
Yeah. So what might be the impact of scarcity of local language digital syndicated sources on the growth of vernacular-based digital media?
So I would just want to sum this up in a single line. I don't think so. In India, there is scarcity of anything. We are living in times of abundance, whether it is our population, whether it is our ideas, our energy levels, and what we have created. But today, we are definitely living in an era of very short attention span. So this also leaves me with a thought, which I want to share with all of you. When you start building up your products, remember that the average attention span, which was 12 seconds in 2020, has now shrunk to only 6 seconds in India. So just be careful. Don't try to draw out things which takes consumer 5-10 minutes to read, because the average time spent per user per session on news media portal is not more than 2 to 3 minutes.
Right. Excellent. So very, very valuable points by all the panelists. I'm really thankful. There was so much to learn from you. I'm sure the audience must have also benefited from this conversation very much. And I think, Shivani will be able to help with contact or more information if somebody would seek. I would like to thank the panelists, the esteemed panelists, as well as the organizers. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
all, Vivek.
Thank you very
Hemant.
much.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
all our esteemed panelists
Chintan,
for such
bye.
an insightful
Bye.
conversation. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.